Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. They are talking about negotiations more and more. Who are they? NATO or the Western countries, the countries of the good. So we had Stoltenberg, the Secretary General of NATO, one of them. Then you have Macron saying that now. You have the Germans, Scholz, mentioning that. And also the situation in Ukraine is obvious. The counteroffensive, Ukrainian counteroffensive is dead, has been dead after the first 3 days it started. And now we have a problem where it seems, and I think that's accurate in about 99%, that's how much I give it, that Zaluzny, the general, the Ukrainian general, or at least the military, I'm not sure if Zaluzny is in charge or not, but the Ukrainian military gives signs that it's futile to keep fighting in vain and have the Ukrainian young men dying for a losing war. Obviously, they can choose to continue to follow the specifications given by Al Capone through Zelensky and have a nation being eliminated. But I don't think the Ukrainians want to do that to their nation. Ignore Zelensky, Shmihal, Yermak, Reznikov, Victoria Nuland, Antony Blinken, and Yellen. Forget about those guys. Think about your nation. So what's going on here? Emmanuel Macron was interviewed by BBC, and I made a video yesterday when he talked about the Israeli issue. You can't touch that because, you can't. Why? Because we live in a free world. So he also makes this statement, which is acceptable to talk about because it's not, all right, it's not the eye of Sauron. So here is the article from Russia Today, November 11th, 2023. Next month could decide Ukraine conflict, Macron said. So the Ukrainians are not ready to get their white flag. Or behind the scenes, the agreement was not reached between Al Capone and their interests, who are in charge of Al Capone, and the guys that are supposed to follow orders in Ukraine. Zelensky is all in. I'm not certain that the Ukrainian military is all in. The time is not yet ripe for peace talks, but, and I'm quoting, fair and good negotiations may be possible in the future, the French president says. The Ukraine conflict could reach a turning point by the end of the year. I mean, you can't make these kind of assumptions without having some evidence. So he must have some evidence to say by the end of the year. That's what, a month and a half? So he knows that things are bad over there. But they try to save face, and they will save it because the mass media is on their side. So they're going to parrot a narrative that would make them look as the winners of this thing. It says French Emmanuel Macron has predicted several months into Kiev's counteroffensive, which has so far failed to make significant gains. You see, this is reporting significant gains. This is a Russian media outlet. They could have said no gains. If this would have been most likely a free press, free world media outlet, they would have failed to make any gains if it was about the Russians. But significant gains. So they agree, they confirm, yes, they made some gains. However, he ruled out the possibility of Ukraine opening talks with Russia in the foreseeable future. Well, I can see very far. So I don't know what's foreseeable for you. I can see very far, millennia. So, okay. In an interview with the BBC released on Friday, Macron claimed if Moscow prevails over Kiev, and I'm quoting, you will have a new imperial power. Great Britain will be screwed, and they can't have that. Everybody else could accept that, but Great Britain, which is actually outside of the European landmass, let's put it this way. But that was always Great Britain's strategic position, not have a strong power on the continental Europe. That was the goal. And remember General de Gaulle of France? He said, remember two things when he was talking to his weasel European leaders. The Americans don't live in Europe, and Great Britain is an island, or England is an island. Why? They have their own interests. They're outside. They're in and out whenever they want, and they want to make sure we don't get along very well. In this case, well, you showed your limits. Al Capone put you against the Russians. Now they go up, take care of Israel, and now you have to deal with Russia, with the garbage, because these guys showed you on at least 4 occasions when they got in, destroyed, and then reconstructed, which is they pulled out. Yugoslavia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and Syria. None of these countries, after they destroyed, they rebuilt. They left behind destruction and suffering. You don't agree with me? Well, you can just click and read a little bit. You don't need more. 1 hour of your time on each subject I covered. Yugoslavia, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, and if you want Syria as well, and see how much beautiful life and freedom and democracy they brought to those countries. And tell me if it's better. So, about the imperial power, I know who's crying the most, besides Al Capone. And he said a new imperial power in Europe, that this is an assumption, but it's okay, time will tell. He argued will threaten many of its neighbors, including former Soviet republics. Well, who has the most military bases on this planet? And it's not called an imperial power. It's called the good force of the United States. So, Crimea River. The French leader reiterated that the West should continue to support Ukraine with military assistance, arguing that next month will be critical in the conflict. However, he did not specify how events in December could affect the eventual outcome. An military insurrection in Ukraine, that's what's going to happen. And the little civil war is ongoing. We don't see it, but from time to time, between Zelensky and Zaluzny and others. Regarding a possible ceasefire of hostilities, Macron suggests that it is not yet time for Ukraine to come to the negotiating table with Russia, because they still hope that maybe those guys in the military don't turn around and say bye-bye, go wherever you want, Zelensky, Stein, and Yermak, and Reznikov, which is already gone. We don't know where Reznikov is. Where is Reznikov? He's screwed up, accused of corruption, lost his job, but he's not indicted. Interesting. And Shmihal too, for little pigs. However, he said that at some point it might be possible to, quote-unquote, have fair and good negotiations, and to come back to the table and find a solution with Russia. Come back to the table? Ukraine's counteroffensive has been underway since early June, but the front line remains largely unchanged. Largely unchanged. Remember, look, this is good reporting or analysis. Largely, so it's changed, but not, And they were talking about the Ukrainian counteroffensive. U.S. network NBC News reported last week that Western officials were engaged in delicate talks with Kiev to see whether it could consider some concessions to Russia to end the fighting. According to the article, the calls were driven by fears in the West that the hostilities have reached, I'm quoting, reached a stalemate, and the Ukraine is running out of forces, end quote. Kiev has repeatedly said it is open to talk to Kiev. Last autumn, however, Zelensky signed a decree banning all negotiations with the current leadership in Moscow, after 4 former Ukrainian regions overwhelmingly voted to join pop. Okay, so Macron knows certain things that we don't know yet. We can smell them, but and see the smell comes from that area over there. And you put things together, connect the dots, and say, yeah, those guys are ready to say it's over. Why? Because NATO is exhausted. There are signs they're exhausted. Remember Meloni from Italy, the prime minister? She was interviewed by some pranksters, and she said that the European leaders, many of them are exhausted with the war, and they would like this to end. Giorgia Meloni. So, my friends, here it is. I think we're getting closer to that. Now the garbage in Israel is where it's at, and the United States showed is very limited abilities to function. It expanded too far and is poor. It seems like we're poor. We pretend, we print money, but also you have to have a certain kind of culture, some kind of population. And when you promote weakness and too much tolerance, then you reach, provide a certain kind of environment, you create a certain kind of entity or organism, in this case, a weak one. But we can't allow that to happen. We have to work, right? Yes. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.